live.
We're
Just
live, and
ask
I
how
still
I
haven't
am.
asked Chris how she's doing. This is how preoccupied we are. I have been about me and my life and what's going on here. So,
But that's okay because we're allowed to go there today. Because considering what your life has been for the last few days, I think you get that privilege.
I get top billing. But I'll ask you now because I know this will rotate back to me fast. How are you?
I'm good. In comparison to the week that you've experienced, I would say not as large in being shaken up and things, but the reprioritize topic is still relevant for me. It's been more on a more closer personal level. I've had some really interesting experiences that have allowed me to reprioritize some of what I think about myself and what others around me value about me or not value about me. And that's the angle I'm taking on this reprioritize
Is
is
that a
who
word? Is it a
I...
word? Is it a word? Reprioritize?
It doesn't matter.
Because
Doesn't matter.
I keep doing this, the apostrophe re prioritize, and it's like it does not like that. So
Look, it doesn't really matter if it's a real word. It's a word for us today, and that's all that's important.
So I'm going to give a little bit of background. Other than the few people who watch this who are local, who know what's going on here in my neck of the woods here in essentially Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, we had a massive storm. Wasn't a tornado, but massive thunderstorm that came through with crazy high winds. There's some researchers that are saying it might be up to 190 kilometers an hour. Trees snapped in half. I can't remember. I think it was about 300,000 people without power. And we were lucky because we were only without power for about 2 days. And that, so yeah, that's kind of
what. Well, that's a thing
here
in itself. Just
right.
2 days without power.
Yeah. So okay. So this is where my mind is headed, because when I said yes, I'm ready to go. Let's do this tonight. I think the topic will be reprioritizing.
Oh, there's another made up word. Love it.
Whatever. It's in the Ian dictionary for now. So, like I said, I don't know where this will run to when we start the conversation. But initially, what I was thinking is, when this all happened, everything that I was focused on leading up to the moment that we had the thunderstorm all went out the window. None of it was important anymore. Right? It was family safety and security. It was like, are the people that are around me, are they okay? Like my father-in-law and mother-in-law, they go to a trailer park every weekend for their getaways. So is this storm there? Because it was a very large, very wide storm that happened. When the power went out, okay, when's that coming back? And it wasn't coming back anytime soon. And I didn't even realize the devastation that had happened with all these power lines being down or whatever, because a thunderstorm happens and people lose power all the time. Okay, it hit the station or whatever, in a couple of hours you got power back. That wasn't happening. And then you start hearing bits of information from people around you about what has really happened. Because I didn't, other than our trampoline being a few doors down, I didn't think much about it being that crazy a storm and that one of our fences was flattened. I didn't know how bad it was outside of that. But as things kind of grew, okay, what else is most important? Okay, now we've got to take care of the food. What do we need to take care of the food? We have no power now. So just that whole refocusing on what's important now, and it became almost like is it Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like where your base level is all your security stuff, right?
Yeah.
Family, security, shelter, safety, food,
survival, food.
Right.
Yeah,
all of the base level needs, and that's all it was for for those 2 days. And when I did
But
venture,
also at the beginning of that, you didn't know how long that would be for too. So that comes into this as well.
yeah, like I'm playing with the kids going, you know what? I'm guessing by 7 o'clock tonight we'll have power. What's your guess? And then they're all within like 15 minutes of Julie and I. So and then we find out, okay, it's going to be at least tomorrow by 4 o'clock, they said, the next day. And then we found out that that's not 4 o'clock tomorrow, that's 4 o'clock in 3 days from now. Like, oh, this is a bigger deal. So now driving around to other parts of town trying to get supplies, get propane for the barbecue, getting ice for the coolers, and trying not to spoil what we do have. So yeah, it just became a different animal.
Yeah, life itself becomes very different. I mean, because also work wise, we rely on power for everything to do with work. I know I do.
Well, the thing is, I didn't even think about work, and I don't think I even
Oh,
thought about work. I like you pick the big concerns in life, like where's my next client coming from, and how am I going to get that business, and how am I going to pay for this, or like all that stuff is gone. I'll pay
mm,
whatever I need to get the gas in the tank, to get the propane in, to get the water, get the ice, whatever. And you don't even, it's just put it on credit. It's fine. It's just go get it. And if credit's going to work, so you're trying to scrounge, try to find cash to make sure that that's, anyways. So yeah, all the priorities just shifted into what do I need to do to take care of myself now, today, and tomorrow the best I can for me and my family. And
mm,
everything else disappeared.
mm. It's a big reality check, isn't it? I mean, aside from the devastation of the storm itself, these sorts of big events really bring you back to basics. And it can be quite confronting because then we have to question the importance that we place on these other things. And we often will place importance on business or getting that next client or what, and forget about playing, because no doubt you played with the kids probably a little
We
bit
played a
more.
lot. We played a lot of games, at least while the light was were on, right? That is
And
until while we had and until we could find flashlights where we could play a little bit later. But yeah, it all changed. It all
yeah, because that connecting with the family and prioritizing that, we almost take that a little bit for granted when we just get on with life and we don't have these big extremes. And it can be really quite confronting to go, well, what's really important? And when can we bring up, like, maybe moving forward, is there an opportunity to do more of the family important stuff and let that other stuff go? Like, have you found a transition where you've gone, right, we're going to adapt this in now moving forward?
I to be honest, I think I'm still in like a processing phase because there's been a lot that's happened, and I'm noticing how tired I feel the last couple of days. Because I don't know psychologically how the body ends up dealing with like stressors like that, how long the body kind of holds on to that energy of like that high alert state. I don't know how that affects people long term, short term, medium term. I'm just noticing like the last 2 days I feel like I am toast by this time of the day.
Well, one of the reasons, and I'm not completely schooled in all of that area. However, what I am aware of is that your what you were seeing in front of you was moving from what you just subconsciously see to what you had to consciously pay attention to. So let's say last week, yeah, sure, the kids were home and they were doing their homework, but you didn't need to interact with them because you had something else you were doing. I'm just making that scenario up.
It's
But
not far off.
and now a week later, here you are playing games with the kids because no one can do homework because no one's been to school because no one's got anything because even if they could do it online, oh, you can't because there's no power. So, okay, let's bring out the board games. And so now suddenly the stimulus in you is really quite different because you are having to consciously pay attention to something that could just kind of be, you're aware of them. And I know you have great relationships with your family and with your kids and wife and stuff like, but it can be kind of just over there a little bit. And so that will be one of the reasons that the energy levels change, because your attention and what you're paying attention to has changed, and that disrupts different parts of your energy system, because different parts of your energy system is now being engaged. Because previously, what's, the ego would have been, what's my drive and motivation to go and do work stuff, or what I want to do, or work out, or whatever. And now it's more emotional, and reptilian brain is kicking in, and there's a whole lot of other areas that doesn't have to function until this kind of event happens. So that's one of the reasons that the feel of the energy changes.
Yeah. Well, sorry, my mind's wandering a little bit as you're talking, because when you're talking about the reptilian brain and whatever, because some of the things that I noticed that I wasn't thinking about is only in reflecting back, like thinking about working out, thinking about my body and what it looks like, and what I'm consuming or putting in my body for food. And over those few days, it's like, I'll eat whatever I can or whatever is available.
What can we cook on the barbecue? And
Exactly that. Or how can I reinvent this so we can do it on the barbecue? Things like that. Exactly that. So it all came down to basic needs, and all the other stuff kind of fell away.
Yeah.
The need to do those things. Anyways.
Yeah, and that's part of that change in the energy. So just coming into that, why your system will feel more tired, it's not because you're awake for any longer, or you're really concentrating on anything else really in any different way, other than you've got different parts of you that are concentrating in a way that you don't usually use. It's like using your muscle for the first time that you haven't used for a while.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So this is what I've been dealing with, is trying to I guess, as I'm processing what's happened over the past week or so, what's really important, and where am I spending my time, and why is that important to me now? Nothing has really happened, really, honestly. Like it really has been just a place to ponder, right? A place to think.
Yeah.
I'm not really in any sort of action mode or mood.
Yeah, I reckon mood's the better one.
at the moment. But that's okay too, right? You don't have to all of a sudden jump into a new way of being or a new way of analyzing things. But oftentimes when these kinds of events happen, it forces you to take stock and to reevaluate where your energy is, and it's a good place to reevaluate. Is it still serving me in that capacity?
Yeah. Yes. And when you suggested this topic, it was funny because
it's basically just a word, because I didn't give you much else.
No, except that you had told me what had happened.
I just told you I had no power, and I wasn't sure it was going
to happen. So what was interesting is that I'd already reprioritized my week based on the fact that there was no power, and I may not be doing this call with you this week, which was completely okay. I'd reprioritized, and then I'd reprioritized again. So I found the topic perfect, because I was like, well, yes, we think one thing's going to happen, something changes, so we change a whole lot of other things, and then we change a whole lot of other things because there's all these changes that occur, and we're actually reprioritizing all the time. Mm-hmm. So I have found myself this week moving things around, and I've been observing how my ability to change and transition due to priorities moving and how that has been affecting me. And one of the insights, well, actually, one of the intentions I wrote down just yesterday was to be observant, because I'd noticed that I was being forced, due to circumstances, to have to observe what's going on rather than getting caught up in reactions.
And what do you mean by that?
To allow myself to stay out of the event. So, for example, very, very tiny examples, not like it was a huge, big priority, but I'm going to use this conversation as part of the example. So for me, this is Friday morning at 9 o'clock. Great. So when you said power's off, it's like, you know what, even if the power comes back on for you, like, we could just leave this for 2 weeks. That's not a problem. It's really not a big deal. I was like, okay, so if Facebook Live's out of my calendar, oh, my girlfriend's birthday is on Sunday, you know what, I'll just go and do a surprise visit with her, and I'll just turn up at her place on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So it wasn't a huge change. I wasn't booking in a client thing or anything else. And then we were back on the Facebook Live. So it's like, okay, so now when do I go see my girlfriend for her birthday?
Because it moved up your list and then it was off your list. And how do I think I want it on my list still. How do I get it back on my list?
Right. And so so what I wanted to do was observe the changes that are happening, and what else if that was changing like that. And I actually went and saw her yesterday. So I still prioritized her. So the reprioritize is not actually, it didn't remove anything. I just then juggled a few more things, and I was observing what else happened to be moving on my behalf. Because if that was consciously moving, there must be other things. And I wanted to step back and see what that was. And so I wanted to be conscious. Well, one of the reveals, when I set an intention in the morning, it plays out. So I'd had a meeting with one of my sisters, and I had a time that I was meeting her. She had some photo albums that I wanted to get hold of for this weekend. I'd left them with her a number of years ago, and I'm meeting up with another relative this weekend. And I thought, it'd be really cool if I had those photos and see if they know anything about these photos, because they mean nothing to me because they're my great aunts, like I don't know who these people are in these photos. So I was going to meet my sister to get those photos. And so I drove there, and I had prioritized going there first. And then after that hour or so of catching up with my sister, that I would then go to my mother-in-law's, because they were kind of on the way home. Well, the exchange with my sister lasted literally 2 minutes. It was here are the albums, see you later. Which, aside from the emotional shock and the mental, like, okay, let me just process that. Suddenly I needed to change the priority of where I was going next, because I'd made a time to go to see my mother-in-law rather than just dropping in at any given moment. And so there was all these other changes. Now, as it was, I did get to my mother-in-law's earlier than expected. She needed a bit more extra time with me, which I ended up being able to give her, because then I could still leave around the same time that I wanted to, but I was able to give her more time. And what was even more lovely in this was when I got to wait for my sister at the location that I was at. It obviously wasn't about meeting up with my sister, because that was a 2-minute nothing. Some random woman, 70 or 80-year-old woman, came up to me and noticed one of my tattoos and said, "Oh, look at this new tattoo I just got, and I'm getting another one in 2 weeks, and it's a blue dragonfly, and I noticed you've got a dragonfly." And I had this lovely conversation. And it was like, here I was at the beginning of the day, prioritizing the photo album exchange. And by just being in the energy of observing, allowed this other woman to come over and have a chat to me, because I'd kind of allowed myself to be in observation. So I was paying attention to others. So I wasn't just honing in on looking for when my sister turned up. I was open for what else might occur, regardless of my conscious priority to get those photo albums. And because I'd set this intention of observation, not only did I let in other experiences that were much more pleasurable than my 2-minute exchange with my sister, which I'd prioritized, but I'd also allowed myself to observe. Oh, driving to my mother-in-law's, there was a rainbow that I happened to see. And if I hadn't have left at the time I left, then I wouldn't have seen the rainbow. But I was also able to see all these other things and not get caught up in the what was, oh, this is a priority today. I've got to make sure that I get to that thing at 2:00. And that was all I was focused on. So I kept it in a observation energy.
I like where you're going with that, because there's an openness to that observer role, right? Where you're just kind of taking it in. You don't, like watching a movie, you don't have to watch the center of the screen. You can look around, you can look in the audience, you can do all kinds of different things, right? When you were talking about that and how your observation allowed in other opportunities for things to happen, what I'm noticing in my story, in my head and in my worldview at the moment, is my focus is very specific on the destruction that's here. Yeah. So it's almost like I'm seeking out that closed-minded, like, look at all the devastation.
Yeah, so where's the rainbow?
But that's not my rainbow. I'm focused on the ground. Like, I'm looking at everything else. I'm singularly focused on all the things that I'm considering to be unfortunate or so sad or whatever. And that's all I'm seeing. And even on the way home from my son's orthodontic appointment this morning, I took a different way home, and I saw the worst stuff, 10 times worse than what I had seen in other areas. So it's my closed-mindedness in this moment of my observation is that's what I'm continuing to seek out, is more of that. But it's an unconscious thing. It's just in my unconsciousness.
As a result of survival. Yeah, it's a result of the survival. Yeah.
I'm focused on all of that. If I can open up, and it's funny because at the beginning of the week, I was more open to everything's fine, things are okay. We're gonna go talk to neighbors. We're gonna make sure everybody's doing all right. Like, I was more okay with it than I have been over the past few days. And my focus and my priority, I guess, in that way, has been more on what is crashed down.
And the benefit for me yesterday that continued, which is fascinating, I had I'm going to call it a random call, but it wasn't random at all, because it was so in aligned with my ability to be open and in that observational space. Well, that was my personal intention, but things just opened up as a result. I had a Zoom call with someone who I've known for about 6 years, and he's mentoring this guy who started up this business, and they've got this idea, and he wanted to see what my thought was on that and get some suggestions on what angle or where the pain point was, because I would potentially represent their ideal client, and what was my insight into what their pitch was really. And I had this great conversation, and at the end of it, Wayne shared that I said to him, why did you pick me? I know who he knows. He's one of these people that just know everybody. He's got these phenomenal world network connections. He's ridiculous. He's just one of those ridiculous people. And I was like, Wayne, I know that you know many, many coaches of many levels of ilk. Like, I just know you do. Why me here now today? And he said, oh, every time you're on a call, you're just always engaging, and I just wanted to interact with you. Mm. And it reminded me that, isn't that interesting? It was a polar opposite to the 2-minute interaction with a family member who I, was surprised by. And then on the very same day, because I'm being open and observed and not focusing on, well, that was crappy, I got this amazing feedback out of this random, unrelated connection. Mm-hmm. Because I was open, because I was willing to observe it and not get caught up in the priority experience yesterday.
Right. And if you hadn't, let me see if I can get my thoughts here. If you weren't open and had the phone call, you may not have even...
I wouldn't have heard him.
No, and you may not have asked that question either, just out of your own curiosity, right? Out of your own curiosity of your observation. Well, why now? Why me? Why this?
Yes, and it wasn't about an ego thing. It was just simply, I know who you know.
I know you got Tony Robbins on speed dial.
Kinda. But I'm really grateful that we're not always as privileged to get those examples or to be able to see those examples so close together. But I really was amazed that I got to see it in a window of literally 4 hours, because one was at 2:00 and one was at 6:30 my time. So that was a 4.5 hour window that I got to see both of those events.
I think that all speaks to your the power of the intention that you talk about. If observation was your intention for that day, and the more tuned in you are to those intentions and how I want to show up, these occurrences, I guarantee, are happening way more than just that 4 hour window. They're happening all the time. But when you are closed off and focused in like a horse blinder type way, you cannot see the possibilities that are around you. Whereas because you set the intention, it's kind of top of mind, you're noticing it, it's going with the flow, sister thing, fine, whatever, there's something bigger here, let me see what shows up, and then this shows up, and you get confirmation of that intention. So yeah. It just, if the muscle is weak, you're not going to flex it. It's hard to flex. It hurts. It just doesn't work the way that you want it to. But the more you use it, the stronger those muscles get, and the more confirmation you'll get in that process as well.
Yeah. And so yes, finding ways to choose something consciously, particularly when something is out of your control. So that's the other thing that I thought of when you mentioned the reprioritize, is that usually we have to reprioritize when something is out of our control.
Like a freak thunderstorm?
Like a freak storm, yeah. For me, it was, I'm not in control of how my sister responds to me.
A different kind of thunderstorm.
Very, but still could be described in the same way. And I could focus on the feel of devastation, and I could focus, but I go, well, let's see the rainbow. So it can be that when things are out of our control. So I like to, well, that's out of my control. What do I have control of? And choose that. Which, like you said, can be difficult when you get caught up in what you're seeing around you.
And I think for me, it was just, it came down to that self-preservation, protective nature, like the core essence of humanity from, throughout time. You got to take care of those core things. And I think because it stripped away everything else that was more superficial in the moment, it just brought me to a more primal space, I think. And I think that's why and maybe that's why I still feel like I'm kind of there. I haven't really opened up much past that. But even in this conversation, I'm seeing some possibility there, obviously. But just having a conversation with somebody about it is letting me see myself from a different perspective too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's what we offer people in every conversation we have with people. And we don't often know, but we just ask them how they are and what's been going on, and just them opening up and sharing some of it allows them to see what they could do differently.
Mm-hmm.
So we've all got this power to do that for others constantly.
That's good.
Well, there we go. That was a conversation.
The storm has passed.
Excellent.
Physically and emotionally.
That is excellent.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. See you all in a few weeks.
Peace.